So as usual, I did something pretty silly and I went on an online auction site and I came across this old thing. It's a wooden box that contains a tap and die set. There was no description whatsoever other than tap and die set in a wooden box. It didn't say who made it, it didn't say who sold it, and it sure as hell didn't say how big this was. I was expecting something that was, maybe a foot or 18 inches, but this is darn near close to 3 feet. This one alone is 24 inches end to end. So in today's exciting episode, we're going to refinish this as best as possible. So first, we're going to take the box apart, we're going to clean it, we're going to glue some of the pieces back together. There's some nails holding it together. Don't know how effective they are. We may have to replace some pieces of wood. I'm hoping not to. I want to keep the box as original as possible, but make it look nice and pretty as best as possible. For the iron, we're going to clean it up. I'm not expecting to put a mirror finish on any of this stuff, but make it look good. I'm not expecting the cutters to be high precision. I don't know what kind of quality they are, let alone were whenever they were made. But we'll get them cleaned up, we'll give them a test run, and if they cut, then nice. Really, I don't know if I'll ever be able to use anything of this size. And as you notice over there, those are just regular drill bits. So we'll clean those up, but we're going to replace them with some tappers so that they go with the set. Welcome back to Master of None. So disassembly is going to be simple, but right off the bat, it's giving me trouble. Just my luck. So first look at the bottom. We've obviously got a split piece of wood. It's pretty banged up. Looks like we've got some dry rot or some serious scrapings that was going on. And the color disfiguration suggests maybe it was sitting in some oil during its life. But this crack, if we look, it shows that this is all one piece. This whole base is one piece. So they carved all the detents out of one piece instead of several layers of wood. So I definitely want to save this as much as possible. So my first instinct is to clean up this bottom, re-glue it, but then also maybe put a sheet of plywood on the bottom to create a new base for it. That's my idea at the moment, and we'll see if that changes as we go through. But other than that, looks like it's really just 6 pieces of wood. 4 for the frame, 1 for the base, and 1 for the bit holder. For the top, similar condition. We've actually got a spline running through on the edge here to keep all the boards together. So there's a couple of nails here. There's 4 nails here. There's a nail here in the center. Don't know why. There's no indication of a lid or a handle or anything. But yeah, that should be fun to slap together too. I'll do what I can to figure out what that sticker used to say. And if I'm lucky enough to figure out what it is, I will try and get a replacement just so that we have some documentation of what this really is. Glued. All right. These nails look to be modern, so I'm guessing the case was glued together back when it was originally built, and the nails were added later in its life. So I don't think there's any need to keep them. So as you can see, this spline is totally broken, and I'm gonna have to replace the whole thing. I don't want to try and just patch it. So what I want to do is replace both splines on both sides, just so that they both look the same. I don't want one looking new and one looking old. I want to point out the dust this is kicking off. If you're going to start one of these projects, make sure you've got a mask on. I'm pretty sure iron dust in your lungs would be considered unhealthy. Now that this is scrubbed up a little bit, we can clearly see the manufacturer's name and start doing a little investigation. Butterfield and Company of Derbyline, Vermont was formed in 1879 by Frederick Butterfield. Oh, here's a good reminder to replace the chuck on your drill press with a keyless version. Anyway, where was I? Right, Frederick Butterfield. His younger brother Franklin joined him in 1888. The company grew to have a plant in Rock Island, Quebec, which was right across the border. The company was bought by the Union Twist Drill Company in 1913, which itself lasted until the 1980s. So here's where things get interesting. A case with this exact layout is highlighted in two Sears and Roebuck catalogs, one from 1912 and the other from 1922, although neither mention the actual manufacturer's name. The 1922 edition even notes the threads per inch. One interesting thing is that the half-inch cutter here is 12 TPI, whereas the modern-day standard in the US is 13 TPI. According to the old interwebs, a half-inch bolt with 12 threads per inch is a British standard Whitworth thread. It was the first standardized thread in the world. It was around this point in my research that I grew tired of trying to understand hundreds of sizes and thread counts and gave up hunting down any further details. So if you know any interesting tidbits about this stuff, just drop it in the comments below. Typically, the dies are not sold with their own individual handles. Usually a set of dies will share a single handle and the operator will swap them out as needed. So I think from the worker's perspective, this set is a bit of a luxury. Each of the cutters has a slot with an adjustment screw to fine-tune the cutter diameter to fit the rod that it's cutting, and it took just a little extra effort to scrape all the gunk out. Each handle was threaded into what I'm calling the collet, correct me if I'm wrong, and some of the threads had gotten really rusty over the years, completely refusing to budge. Two of the handles remained seized even after hitting them with a blowtorch and soaking in Evapo-Rust overnight. I didn't want to damage the handles because if you looked closely at them, they were actually formed from a flat sheet of metal. They were rolled into shape and then bronze welded. If I damaged them in any way, there would be no way of me fixing them, so I let those two handles be. So this is the first time I'm going to try Evapo-Rust, and I gotta say, looking back, it is way better than using vinegar. One, there's no smell like vinegar has, and the level of cleanliness is far superior. Here the cutters are getting an ultrasonic bath in Evapo-Rust just to get in all the little nooks and crannies. To clean the two cutters with the handles that were rusted solid, I'm using a poster tube to clean them. I used some masking tape to strap it to the workbench leg, filled it with Evapo-Rust, and let them sit overnight. Ultimately, it didn't dissolve the rust that was keeping the handles in place, but it cleaned everything else, and that was good enough for me. Now that everything's been cleaned, it's time to start polishing. Turns out with all the little nooks and crannies, there's quite a bit of polishing to do, and I even took time to take care of the hinges for the lid. With everything polished up, it's time for reassembly. I hit all the metal parts with PB Blaster as a protectant. Now that everything's reassembled, let's do some quick before and after shots before we turn our attention back to that case. So the first thing I need to do is actually clean all this wood, and I'm going to do something a little unconventional and sort of wash it as if I was washing a car. So much so that I'm actually using Meguiar's all-purpose cleaner. I'm going to give everything a quick rub down with a dry towel, but I'm actually going to use an air hose and blow all the nooks and crannies out. All right, so after that bath, we've got some decent looking wood. We still have some thick chunks of dirt that I'm going to hit with a scraper real quick, and then we'll give it another quick wash. Just for comparison, this is what the outside of the box looked like before the wash and after the wash. I didn't wash this because this is the one with the sticker. I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to hand wash this instead of dunking it in the bucket like all the others, so that I preserve what's left of the sticker as much as possible. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find a replacement for that. I saw a picture of another eBay sale that was slightly different, not an exact match. So I'm going to keep poking and poking, but I'm expecting that that's just going to stay the way it is, and we'll never get another replacement. But fingers crossed, hope springs eternal, right? Anyway, let's keep going. I'm guessing the inside here was protected with shellac. Whatever it is, it was coming off pretty easy and didn't have to do any other sort of abrasive cleaning with it. If you've never heard of using compressed air to dry something, here's a sped up look at how quickly this lid is drying. Now that everything is bone dry, it's time to slather some glue. We're just going to glop this on real thick and then work it in with our finger. Our finger, the collective finger.
The next day.
I wanted this glue to cure overnight to make sure it stayed together. After that, it's time to start sanding everything. Not necessarily to remove any of the scars or nicks, but just to make sure that there's a nice soft feel to it and get rid of any of the splinters that have grown over the years. There was still a lot of detritus built up in the base of this thing, so I went with a scraper and gently took care of it. One of the challenges is that there was a lot of wood rot, so every time I scraped something clean, it turned out that there was just mushiness underneath it, and it took forever to get to something solid. One thing I found useful is actually using one of the handles to wrap the sandpaper in, and made it easy to get that curve. Great example of never having enough clamps. You'll see as I'm attaching this third one that there's some slippage, which I didn't notice at first. So that threw me into a slight panic to make sure that this got clamped up in the right spot. I wound up getting clamps on all three sides to make sure it was where it was supposed to be. Gluing up the tray was another challenge because there were a lot of little pieces and a lot of wood rot to deal with. At the end of the day, it got kind of messy with the amount of glue I wound up using. I thought I could clean it up with some sandpaper, but that wound up taking a lot more time than I expected, so this became an example of done is better than perfect. One day I'm going to stop using too much glue.
Sloppy.
So the next step in this project is to deal with what I'm calling the breadboard ends. I don't know if that's really the right term for this, but these need to be rebuilt, especially this one. That's beyond all hope. So I'm going to have to remake these, and instead of going with a wood that I can find as similar as possible, I'm actually going to go with Purple Heart, because I got it laying around and it seems like a nice little sparkle to the project. So we're going to see if I can't remake a couple of these. It just is the right size and length. So we'll just have to cut this out. And I don't know if you can tell easily, but we've got just a little notch, which is that breadboard detail. I'm thinking if there's a proper phrase for this, let me know, but I'm going with a breadboard. So, just rounded edge, rounded edge, rounded edge. That should be easy-ish. Let's get going. To get the right size, I'm using the original part to set the fence on my table saw. After these were cut to size, I had to cut some rabbets, or do you say rebates, on each side. Again, I was able to use the original parts to set the blade height. After that, I used a hand plane to dial in the right dimensions. With all the parts ready, it's time for the glue up. And I'm not going to do it all at once. Because the three main pieces are all slightly warped, it couldn't be a straightforward process. So the first step is to glue the three boards together, get a caul in the middle to wrangle them as flat as possible. And I'll use the splines to help keep them lined up at the ends, but I won't glue those in just yet. Okay, so I'm going to glue the splines on now, and I'm going to do them one at a time because I want to make sure I focus on these gaps at the end. The wood is actually splitting. It looks like it's laminated, but it's not. I don't know if that's really coming up on camera, but yeah, I'm hoping I can take care of this little warpage and focus all my energy on getting that one spline set properly and get some culls in here to squeeze these together. So one at a time. It's going to take a little extra effort, but I think it's going to be worth it. You're in place. You're in place. Everybody's in place. All right, let's wipe that down. Let it dry. Once both ends were glued in place and dried overnight, it's time to do the final shaping of the Purple Heart. For that, I'm going back to the hand plane and comparing it along the way to the original piece. To take care of the corners, I wanted to use the palm sander because I didn't want to risk any blowout from using a hand plane. With that all done, it's time to get some boiled linseed oil on all the wood. Once this first coat had dried overnight, I came back with a second coat for the entire thing. I decided not to install a sheet of plywood on the bottom of the case, but I did want to make sure that it didn't sit in anything in the future, so I attached 4 little rubber feet. Nearly every one of these holes for the hinges has been blown out over the years, so I'm just going to take a little bit of a toothpick, jam it in each hole, and that I'm not even going to bother gluing it in. That should be enough tension to just compress everything and keep everything in shape. And like that, we have a lid. Now with the lid attached, we'll apply some furniture wax to give it that ultra smooth feel. And just like that, we're finally done. And now, the obligatory before and after shots. I know you're all curious to see how well they work, so let's do a couple of tests. This is kind of meditative. Would you look at that? Oh, that looks really cool. One of the benefits of quarter 20 is most camera equipment has a quarter 20. Look at that. I can make my own mounts. That's gonna be cool. Yeah. Well, this has been a long time coming. I worked on this in several stages over the course of 19 months. What was I doing during that time? Making excuses. Since this kit didn't come with the original taps, I obviously could only test the dies, and I have to say I'm really pleased with how these turned out. Now it's time to find some taps and start making my own nuts and bolts. Overall, this was a pretty fun project. The case cleaned up really nice, and it still has that work to hard life look to it. With the BLO and the paste wax, I think it'll stay looking this way for a long time. Who knows, maybe even another 100 years. I decided not to replace the sticker since I wasn't able to find an image that would look like an original. So if any of you know where I can get my hands on something that'll work, please let me know. For the actual cutters, I don't think I could have asked for them to turn out any better than they did. They cleaned up real well, and the handles, while there is some pitting, are silky smooth. Cutting the aluminum was a breeze, so I don't think I have to sharpen those cutters anytime soon. So that's it for this one. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you enjoyed this video, head on over to my page and take a look at some of the other videos I have. I do more than tool restorations. Maybe something will catch your eye. And if you like any of those others, click the subscribe button to see what I'm up to in the future. On that, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.